Hello and welcome to Sustainable Kashi's free permaculture class. This is class number 30, and it is our last class of 2020. We at Sustainable Kashi are very proud to be able to offer these classes as a way for us all to connect through the environment and permaculture and to help build a more regenerative and sustainable world. Please check out sustainablekashi.com for more information about our project. Thank you all for joining us. This was our first year doing the free classes online. I've been doing free permaculture classes for almost 7 years. So that's a long time. It's a really interesting story because when I got my permaculture teacher certificate, I did a GoFundMe. And I said, if you guys send me to permaculture teaching school, I'm going to teach my community free permaculture classes for a whole year. So I got 150% of my goal. They paid for my trip. They made me a teacher. Yay. And I did free classes that whole year. And it turned out that I loved it so much that I've been doing it every year for 7 years now. And it's part of my service to give these free classes because I believe permaculture is not just for the people who can afford to go to classes. It's for all of us. It's for everyone. It's for the earth. And it's a needed tool that we all need to know. So thank you for being part of my journey of teaching free permaculture classes. Today is a very special class because we had the opportunity to sit down with Rob Greenfield. He's an adventurer, an environmental activist, and he's been an active part of the movement for over 10 years. And we got to get his opinions and his feelings on environmental justice, social justice, and just the entire environmental movement. So it's going to be a very exciting video, and we hope you enjoy it. Welcome. We are here with Rob Greenfield, environmentalist, activist, and good friend who's been working with the environment for over a decade, working with environmental issues, social justice issues, and organic food.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. It's good to have you here. I've always been impressed with your ability to grow food, and it's kind of a new thing for you.
Yeah, I mean, when you and I first met 3 years ago now, right about this time 3 years ago, I was at the farmer's market in Winter Park. And that's when I only bought food from the farmer's market, but I'd grown very, very little. And so when I came here to Florida, I had just a couple of raised beds in the past. You know, I'd done just a very little bit of growing, and it's hard to imagine that not that long ago I really had no idea how to grow food. Even I remember researching like how much sun does kale need, how much water do you put on a carrot seed, just being a total complete rookie.
It's a lot to learn, and you learned it in a short amount of time. I remember you had asked me the question, who do I know who has grown all their own food and who has lived truly sustainably and regeneratively? And I couldn't think of a single person.
Yeah.
And now I'm proud to say I can think of one. How has that experience changed your life?
Yeah, I remember when we talked about it, and I feel like at first maybe you were like, yeah, I have to know some people, and you thought about it for a while, and then you had examples of people who have done 80%, you know, people who grow a lot of their own food, but as far as I was searching for somebody who's grown or foraged all of their food, and you know, that was one of the reasons I decided to do it, was because I couldn't find people who had done it, and it was something that just interested me so much. And you know, I can't say how different I feel now versus before, because everything is just one little bit at a time. You know, like the journey of learning to grow food was just every day I learned a little more. And so you just gradually, you know, I just kind of gradually came into being a semi-experienced person who grows food. So yeah, I guess I haven't thought about that. But it certainly feels good to know that I can, if needed, grow and forage 100% of my food with like minimal problems if I wanted to launch into that right now.
It's inspiring to say the least. And I'm sure we have some people on who are in the same place where they're just starting out. So from not knowing how to grow a carrot to growing all your own food, what are some of the resources that you found the most helpful?
Yeah, well, I would say one of the big keys is like local resources. So when I first got to Florida 3 years ago, my job was just to talk to everybody in the area who grows food, ask them what grows really well, talk to them about what doesn't. Like a lot of people when they start growing food, they say, well, I want to grow blueberries, and they just say, where can I get a blueberry plant? And that's what they plant. But here in Florida, blueberries want acidic soils, so you have to alter your soil to grow blueberries, whereas like there's other fruits that just grow extremely well here. So what I did is I just talked to people, and just for the most part my biggest question was, what grows so ridiculously well that it takes very little work, where you have way more food than you can eat, where you're composting it because you just can't eat it all. And so I talked to gardeners and foragers and went to classes and came here and to other sites like Hart in Lake Wales, and visited like Marabou Thomas's place and the Peanut Butter Palace, and went out on swarm rides with Fleet Farming, visited all the community gardens in the area, went to the Florida School of Holistic Living and the herbal conference, and went out foraging with Green Dean and watched Pete Canaris' YouTube videos, and got Robert Bowden's fruit and vegetable gardening book and Peggy Lance's foraging book, and I could just, off the top of my head, those are just some of the resources here. And so my recommendation for people who are beginning is to don't try to reinvent the wheel, talk to people in your area, and then if possible, volunteer with them. Basically do an internship. It could be a very informal internship where you just go over to their house every Saturday for 4 hours in the morning, and you basically weed their garden for them, because every gardener wants someone to weed for them. Gain their trust and their affection, and they'll start giving you plants and seeds and sharing all of their knowledge. And yeah, so that's really the big thing, is just seek out the local community. Oh, and of course I didn't mention Orlando Permaculture.
Amazing resource.
Yeah, and that was a big one for me. And I think there's like 3,000 or so people in the Orlando Permaculture Facebook group. And then now there's a couple dozen permaculture and gardening groups for Florida in particular. So yeah, just so many resources, and the information is out there.
Wonderful. Now, you had talked about looking for the plants that really produced a lot of food. What varieties and what plants would you recommend people get started to really make an impact on their grocery bill?
Well, would you say most people listening are Florida?
We can stick with the tropics, but
Yeah.
we have people from all over.
Yeah. Well, I actually just came up with an idea with Greg the other day, Greg Noonan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically like the survival garden bundle. So here in Florida, there's so many plants you can start from cutting. A lot of beginner gardeners think seeds, but there's so many plants where you just need a branch to break off a branch and plant it. And so I came up with this idea of this bundle of cuttings, where you just have 20 or so cuttings, you tie it together with some twine, give that to somebody, and they have the startings for their own survival garden. So, and by survival garden, I mean plants that you can basically put in your backyard. They'll grow with minimal care. Everything requires some care, but minimal care, where you will be able to walk back out there and eat if you need to. So I would put into that cassava or yucca, sweet potatoes, yams, although between those three I would go with cassava and sweet potatoes over yams, and then moringa, katuk, chaya, and then perennial spinaches like Suriname spinach, longevity, Okinawa. There's probably 10 or so of the different perennial spinaches that are popular. And then Tithonia, is a good dynamic accumulator. So these are all things that can be started just by going over to your friend's food forest. Oh, and of course bananas. With bananas, you can just go to a friend's banana patch and just dig up one of the pups and then start that, and in a few years' time you can have your whole banana patch. So those would be some, and then I do like annuals for fast production. You plant some seeds and 3 months later you've got a good amount of food. So lots of greens like kale and collards and mustard greens and arugula, and I mean the list could kind of go on, but those are some of the things that I would. Oh, and papaya. Oh. Can't not mention papaya.
You're making me hungry. These are some of my favorite foods.
Oh, and Seminole pumpkin, of course. Yes, so pumpkins. these are new. You said this is a Seminole pumpkin butternut?
It's a hybrid, yeah, it's hybrid.
So I ate this for breakfast today. That's a definite, but wherever you are in the country, your local squash, zucchini is a good one, and then beans are another one, and peas. There's so many easy foods. I would sum it up by saying find out again what grows really well in your area and grow that.
Perfect. I love your energy and your excitement about talking about all this. And I notice when you come into an area, you change things. It's just things are happening, things are moving. And what would you attribute your ability to do that to?
Well, it may be just that I care enough, and that I'm excited enough, and excitement is contagious, like when I'm out foraging, it's like, oh, look, bananas, or whatever it is. And I think people might, I guess I would say to a large degree, I think what you're talking about is not something that I'm necessarily trying to do. It's just the way that I am. I would say that's a big part of it, just the fact that I am so passionate and excited about these things. And that I think today, with so many people living, kind of sucked into the boredom of the Western way of life, I think seeing anybody doing just about anything exciting can get people excited. But I do believe right now, like in our circle, especially, it's people doing something that's meaningful for greater humanity and the earth is like really what excites the people in our realm. Because you could be driving just a fast car and have a big house, and then outside of our circle, that's what's going to impress everybody. Here, not so much. So there's that. And then as far as the strategic part of where I'm actually, when I'm trying to get people to do things, I would say because, I used to do sales, ran a marketing company, so I just kind of naturally have that like convincing, like that good sales pitch with things. And the other thing is working hard. Like if you put in 20 hours of work and I put in 80 hours of work, that's 4 times more success. And it's not uncommon for me to be working 80 hours a week on something that I'm really passionate about. And I believe it's not just 4 times more work that you can accomplish in a week, which is like, well, 4 times work means what someone else could accomplish in 4 years, I could do in 1 because of the sheer amount of effort I'm putting in. But also once you get into a vibration of your work, like when you're really passionate about it, those 80 hours can be multiplied just because you're in such a good rhythm, which you can lose by overworking too. And so that's where there's a balance. But I would say those are some of the things.
Yeah, I've really noticed the environment changes after you are through it. And that's really a wonderful attribute. And we're really, really happy to have you back in Florida.
Good.
Thank you for choosing to come back and gift us with more of your projects.
Nice.
I'm really excited. What's next on the horizon?
Well, right now it's somewhat of a continuation of what I've been doing in the past, except being much more hands-on and involved. So there's, when I first got to Florida, I started the Free Seed Project, Gardens for Single Moms, which kind of transformed into Gardens for the People, and Community Fruit Trees. And then I also started the Community Compost Initiative, but that's one that I never really got off the ground much. So the idea is that these programs are designed to be very easy ways for people to get involved, and not just get involved, but actually be able to start similar initiatives in their own communities. So, community fruit trees, for example, is just as simple as planting fruit trees in publicly accessible places where anybody can enjoy the fruit. And so for me, my programs are always about me being a part of it, hands-on, lead by example, but then showing other people how they can do it as well. So I'll be planting, somewhere in the couple hundred fruit trees in Florida this winter, but then showing people how they can do it across the country. So, my goal is to get people planting thousands of fruit trees that are publicly accessible all across the country.
Oh, it's wonderful.
And then free seed project, this year we're sending out 10,000 free seed packs to people. So we're able to basically do what would cost someone about $50 to $75 to buy the seeds. If they were to, we send out about 20 varieties of seeds, like kale and arugula, to different herbs like basil and oregano, to the beneficial insect attractant mix. So we send out about 20 or so varieties of seeds, which if you went and bought a packet of each of those at say $3, you're talking $60. But by me buying them in huge quantities, I just purchased $5,000 worth of seeds, 100 pounds worth of seeds.
Nice.
I can bring that cost down to 15 cents of what someone would spend about $60 on. And then with our costs of packing the seeds into the envelope and shipping, it comes out to $1.35 this year to provide someone what would cost them $50 to $75.
Wow.
And then we provide these seeds to people primarily who don't otherwise have access or the money to plant a garden. So the idea is really, or new people who have never gardened before. So it's about giving access, helping give access to people to grow more food. And then gardens for the people is just as simple as building gardens for people that wouldn't otherwise, be able to do it on their own because of money or physical capabilities or something like that. And then community compost, the goal this year, as we were talking about yesterday, is to rescue and compost 1 million pounds of food waste, which I know is at this point out of my range. Like, I know it's possible, but I got some serious work to do, which will be dumpster diving and then starting community compost initiatives, like where people pick it up on bicycles or drop-off points. And the idea is all these programs I'll be doing in Orlando, but then I'll have a team of people who are helping to spread these programs around the United States and around the world.
It's amazing. And one of the things I really appreciate about you and your life is the integrity. Like, every aspect of your life is connected to your goal, and I never see you walking out of that integrity. It really impresses me. So I wanted to ask you, what are some of the strategies you would recommend to people to live in their daily lives, to walk with the earth in mind?
Well, I think one of the ways to make it the easiest is to be doing what you love. Like, I basically want to be doing these things, so it's not so hard to live in integrity because I'm not going against the grain of my own desires. I'm just doing what I'm yearning for, which makes it easier. But with that being said, of course, this is a difficult world to actually accomplish your yearnings of living a regenerative or sustainable life, because our entire infrastructure and society is kind of designed to do the opposite, which is pillage and destroy everything to get what we want. So it's very much a challenge. My suggestions for people is to start where they are. A lot of people, I know people look at me and they often just see what I'm doing and then they just say, well, I can't do that, and they do nothing. And they don't realize that there was a journey to get to this point. 10 years ago I was, using the paper towels and drinking the bottled water and double plastic bagging things at Walmart, and just a consumer in many ways. And I woke up and I changed that bit by bit. And so, I would say embrace who you are. You can only be you. Where you are, you can only in that moment be where you are, and then embrace the moment you're in. Like, you can't be in the future, you can't be in the past, you're where you are. And so just acknowledge that, embrace that, and start there. And then the other thing is start with what you're excited about. So if there's things that you're just like that are daunting to you, like maybe you love paper towels. You have a paper towel addiction, which I meet people who have them. You can't give up paper towels right now, but maybe you're stoked about starting to get food at the farmer's market and ditch the crap from Walmart. And you're excited about that and you want to do that. My recommendation is start there and do things that you're excited about, and then you'll kind of build up to things that right now seem like not something you don't want to do. After making a few dozen changes, that thing might just come naturally without any force or pressure. So yeah, that would be another thing. And one other thing is just write things down, make goals. If you just have all these ideas, it's really hard to stick to them. But if you have a whiteboard or a piece of paper to just put where you see it every day, and just make achievable goals bit by bit, so that you can get you have your far off goals that seem unattainable. Well, have goals that bit by bit get you into that realm.
It's beautiful, beautiful. I think that accountability can help us all. How do you see community play a part in ecological sustainability?
Well, I started off extremely individualistic because I grew up in an individualistic American society where the kind of idea that I grew up with is you're supposed to earn everything yourself, not be given anything. It's not about sharing, because sharing means you don't have more than someone else, and more is what makes you successful. So definitely, like, early on, I still had, when I started environmental activism in 2013ish, it was very individualistic and even competitive. I remember competing with other environmentalists and it took me a few years, bit by bit, to move away from that, because if you're competing with other environmentalists, then you're not coming from the right place, because any environmentalist doing a good job is good. There should be no competition. And so, what was the question again?
Community.
Yeah. So I started out really individualistic, and then more and more realized that the solutions lie in community. I do think we need individuals who are just going to take things and run with them. And people like to follow leaders, and that can create community by doing so. If your community in your where you live doesn't care about the environment at all, you might need to start off as a leader who gets people to care, but then what we need to do is create community, because it's really hard to sustainably long-term do things as individuals. It's for most people it's going to cause burnout, and probably in the relatively short period of time, matter of years or less than a decade before you just burn out. So I think the solution to our problems lies in community, and that is in so many ways. Sharing resources, sharing skills, combining our energy. Just for example, like simple things like if you have 8 people living in a house instead of 1, you only need to cook once per night each person, or you only have to clean once per week. Like, by working together, we can just make life so much easier. And then, of course, there's just the reality of loneliness and connection. I think community is what makes it more fun. I enjoy a lot of things I do on my own, like biking across the country solo. I enjoy very much. But in the long run, I think that you for really successful things to work, we need to do things in a much more communal type way. And the individualistic way is just probably would never solve our problems.
I'm reminded of the African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go with a tribe.
Yeah.
And I think you've really found that.
I need to work on that a lot more, because I am very much still a loner. I do things my own way. I still have a lot of that, and And that's so that's something that I'm working on becoming better at, is a teammate, because I've my whole life I've done things my own way a lot, and so that proverb is something that I am really going to be working on this year.
That's
for
right.
sure.
You're really developing a team to do more greater change making. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So for the winter, I'll be here in Florida, and I'm creating a team of about, well, like 6 to 8 people. It's basically like a volunteership or internship program. The position is called Changemaker Internship, and the idea is, so I'm gonna have a place which is in the works right now, and the team is in the works right now, where we will be able to come together, work in community on these projects that I mentioned, where it's about service first and foremost. People who want to live in service to Earth and humanity, working together, but then it's also about community. Being able to spend time with each other and make this a more fun, enjoyable experience rather than just composting on our own and starting initiatives on our own, having a team. And then the other aspect is is educational, an opportunity for people to learn about these things and me to share my knowledge with them. So yeah, this year will be I'm really excited for that. By early January, the team will be fully assembled, and all these programs I mentioned will be getting into full swing.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's exciting. So, how do you see the importance of social justice playing into your work, especially now?
Yeah, well, I will say that I was I was semi-oblivious to that when I started out. I say semi because for me, this all was about justice. This was all about, as an environmentalist, I always, at the very beginning, it was about justice for people, justice for other species, for humanity, and for this earth. Because when I woke up in 2011, I realized that our ways of life, especially the Western, higher income, group of people on this earth, our way of life is destroying the way of life of other people, other species, and just crushing this earth that we need. And I realized that the clothes I was wearing were being made by people in horrible conditions. The fossil fuels that I was burning, were polluting other areas, whether it was through oil spills or whether it's through emissions, whether it's through what I now know, a term is called fence line communities. So people who live next to these oil refineries who have much higher rates of cancer and respiratory diseases because in order to have this oil for whatever's made of plastic, like including these shorts that I'm wearing, or our cars, or whatever, like this table probably has oil in order to make it. Not this pumpkin, though. All of these things require oil refineries, and these oil refineries are generally next to lower income communities, which are often black communities in the United States. And so, very early on, I realized that my life was unjust and unequal. And so I set out to fix that. My finances were invested in fossil fuels and cigarettes, for example, through my mutual funds, through my IRAs. And so from the very beginning, it was about correcting my life so that it would be just. I didn't have the term social justice back then. I was more focused on the environmental way of going about it. But again, knowing that our environmental impact it's our life. There is no separation. Environment, us, it's all the same. So that's why I said I was semi-oblivious, because it was at the very center of why I was changing my life and why I was crusading for change. But then at the same time, what I hadn't realized was, my privilege as a white person, as a American, as a male, as so many other things, allowed me to do the things that I did in a certain way that were not accessible to other people. So if I was to say, like, everybody can live zero waste. That is more likely to be something that I would have said 5 years ago. And then I learned, one of the projects I did is I lived in a what I used to call food desert, but now I've heard the term food apartheid, because it's human created, a food desert. It's not naturally created. It's not a desert. It's an unjust and inequitable system. But anyway, so I lived in a place where there's not access to food in Atlanta for a month, trying to see if it was possible to eat healthy on $4 a day, which is what the average person gets who gets food stamps or SNAP. And so that was in 2016, and I managed to eat overall pretty healthy on $3.75 a day. Nothing with a chemical ingredient, nothing processed. And so then that was kind of the beginning of my awakening that, okay, this isn't possible for everybody, because I had a lot of time, no family, no job. This was my job in part. And so, that was a wake up, but I still had that like privilege where it was still thinking most people could do it. And then just more and more I've realized that, so much of the mainstream environmental stuff is based on what is accessible to the wealthier people who have spare time and energy and resources and social capital and so on. And so for me, I guess I'm trying not to live a life that's either delusional or that is untruthful. And to be saying everybody can do this it's untruthful and inaccurate. And then another element is just that the people who tend to get the worst end of the deal from this whole consumerist thing is often lower income communities and communities of color. So it's just there's so many elements to it, but if you're missing the human aspect, which people call social justice from environmental justice, then you're missing too many pieces of the puzzle, and you may be doing more harm than good, which a lot of environmentalist people are. They're actually in many ways doing more harm than good because they haven't deeply thought things out. So I think it's, I would just summarize it by saying that environmental and social justice are inseparable. You got to look at every element and you design things and create your work in a way that is accessible, and that's a hard job. Takes a lot of work, takes a lot of education. We're going to screw up, but we need to keep educating ourselves and doing better.
Yeah, for many of us, I think it's hard to see the forest through the trees, and I really appreciate your awareness and your focus on helping share that message.
Well, one reason that I'm able to do it is because so many people commented over the years about these things, and I listened to them. So if you're getting comments, especially from Native Americans, if you're here in the United States, Black people and Black communities, if you're getting comments from them saying, hey, what about privilege, and is this accessible to everyone, and bringing in that perspective, listen. And at first I didn't listen much, but my work is today because I listen to people. And so if you are, a permaculturist, an environmental activist, don't slough off those comments. Read them and think about them, and if they hurt, maybe pay even more attention to them.
Thank you. Hey, that's very, very wonderful advice. So what inspires you? What gives you the most hope for humanity?
Well, I guess the times that I'm the most inspired is through action. This year has in many ways been a pretty uninspirational year, and I'm kind of realizing that it's because of coronavirus, how so much action has just been reduced to sitting at home, watching and things like that. I've had a hard time being as inspired this year because what inspires me is action, which the good news is that means when I'm uninspired, I have to just simply do something, and that gets me into motion. activism, the word activism includes, it's based on the word of action, doing something. And so what inspires me is either doing something myself or seeing other people doing something and joining them or supporting them. So what inspires me is that millions of people are activated and are doing something. It's easy to look at the problems in the world today, and unfortunately there's a lot of people who think that they're the only ones doing something. I can't tell you how many times people are like, oh, I'm going to start this initiative. What do you think about that? And I'm like, well, dozens of people are already doing that. Do you realize that? And they don't realize that because they haven't gone as far as just looking to see that already tons of people are doing things. And so action and doing things together, community, not doing things alone, and the fact that we can make a difference. I don't have any belief that I can change the world, or that you can change the world, or that even if we got every one of our friends, that we would change the world. If we got all of our friends together, we would make a change, though. That I'm certain of. And through the years that I've been involved, I've seen monumental change on an individual level, sometimes on a community level, and then rippling across the country and the world through our actions. And the good that we do, in many ways, I would say at this point, hasn't fully outweighed the bad. I think we are still a consumeristic society that is pillaging this earth at an unattainable rate that's not only will catch up to us, but already has caught up to us, and we're seeing the mass destruction. But that doesn't mean that our actions aren't meaningful. And I've seen people's quality of life just drastically improve through work that I've been involved in. And I've seen, initiatives that have just made huge impacts in communities, initiatives that often start from a backyard or a garage or in one person's mind. And so I'm just inspired because I am 100% certain that we can make a difference, and we can make a meaningful difference, and we can live in a way where we don't rob from future generations to have a good life now. And that in itself is pretty beautiful. Like, I don't put the world's problems on my shoulders or on anyone's shoulders. I don't think that any one of us 7 or so billion people alive today were born with the burden of humanity. But if we want to, we can choose to uplift the people around us through our lives and our actions. And it's certainly a great time to do that. So that keeps me going.
Beautiful. I see you as a human of action helping to make this world a better place. And I'm really grateful that you've taken the time to talk to our community and for all the work that you do.
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know you, what is the best way to contact your work?
My website, robgreenfield.org, is just full of how-to guides and beginner's tips to zero waste, gardening, growing food, foraging, living sustainably in so many different ways. I would definitely recommend that resource. A lot of the people who do follow me don't realize how much information is on that site. And if you just go to the little search feature, you type in any keywords, like maybe it's rainwater harvesting, or maybe it's like, what about health insurance? Type it in there and see if I have a resource. There's a good chance I do. And then the resource section. I've created a new resource section that has 9 main categories. And if you get through all that, you'll be in a good place. And then, of course, social media. You can just type in Rob Greenfield into Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, and maybe TikTok in the next few months. We'll see.
Exciting. Stay tuned.
That might be exciting, or that might be scary.
Well, thank you, Rob, for taking the time with us, and we look forward to seeing what you do in the future.
Yeah, thanks for, I know a lot of these questions came from you that requested them, and a lot of you requested for Terry to have me on the program, so thanks for doing that. You made it happen. And thanks, Terry, for what, 7 years now of sustainability courses?
Yes.
And
Free online permaculture, free permaculture classes for the community.
and this is number 30 of this.
Yep.
Yeah, so good stuff. Lots of education, and thanks for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye now.
All right. Love y'all.
Thank you, Rob, for being such an inspiration and such a true example of what integrity and action looks like in our community for environmental justice. I really want to thank Rob Greenfield. I want to thank Amy Zelt for doing all the production side. In this time of holiday giving, if you're feeling extra charitable and want to see these classes keep on going till next year, please feel free to donate. It is exactly what we want for Christmas. And Amy will put the link on where you can donate right in the chat box. We are very grateful that you have been with us this first year of our online permaculture classes. We're excited to see 2020 slip away and 2021 rise from the ashes of this transformational year. Thank you so much for joining us this year, and we look forward to seeing you next year with even more wonderful presenters, wonderful programs, and wonderful subjects. Thank you so much. Have a very wonderful holiday.